So there's been some discourse in the book girly community, specifically about what a true enemies to lovers trope looks like. Is it better if the characters secretly admire each other? Or do they need to violently hate each other from the start? Since I'm obviously a very educated detective, I decided to read an enemies to lovers book in every major romance genre to see if I can find one that can be deemed the best example of the trope. Now, let's go buy some books. I'm just kidding. I technically already have the first one. Starting with my comfort genre, contemporary romance, I'll be reading The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. I read a lot of rom-coms. If you can see all of the colors on my bookshelf, it's because they're mostly rom-coms. This one's also called The Hating Game, so I'm assuming that means this couple better be hating each other. This book follows Lucy Hutton and Joshua Templeman, two co-workers at a book publishing firm who absolutely hate each other. But when they're both up for the same job promotion, all that tension turns into something a lot more complicated and a lot less hateful. So I'm definitely getting enemies to lovers because clearly they hate each other. They're up for the same job. So let's start reading. Now, in order to judge each of these genres fairly, I'll be ranking them based off three things. How much the characters truly hate each other, if the romance development feels believable, and if the book is addictive in true enemies to lovers fashion. Okay, I'm about 50 pages in. I am on chapter 5, and yep, I'm loving it. Okay? It's still a little too early to gauge that if this is going to go the true enemies to lovers part, but there is so much tension between Joshua and Lucy. And I'm not gonna lie, they keep describing Lucy as like really tiny with dark hair and red lipstick. I guess I get to be a little delusional. I guess it's me, actually. Overall, I'm having a fantastic time. If there's a little spice in this, yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. I'll have some of that. Later that day, I actually had a flight to go see my best friend Madi in Florida, so I got a little bit of reading done on the plane. I'm at Maddie's right now, so I haven't read for a couple days because we were celebrating her birthday. But I have been reading a little bit at night. They stopped hating each other around page 60, unfortunately. So I'm waiting to see. I feel like there might be a part where they start hating each other again. Like they start to be friends, and then they decide they actually really hate each other. So that's what I'm hoping for. We'll see. Before I could even get to the official halfway point, the hating feelings between the main characters, Lucy and Josh, are pretty non-existent. They are still competing with each other, but I think this is playing out to be more of a slow burn / rivalry trope, in my opinion. That being said, I am still so invested. I am loving this book. But like I said, this is my comfort genre, so I'm gonna finish this book and then we'll see where I land. I had to turn my mic on really quick because I think they're about to bone in this cloak closet. So even though they're not really enemies anymore, I'm having a great time. Okay, so I finally finished The Hating Game. I'm back in Texas now. Maddie's still here. Hey! But that's why my bedroom looks like a slumber party, because it is a big slumber party. But I finished The Hating Game, and listen, first thing I want to go over, is it a true enemies to lovers? Per my requirements, this book was insanely addictive. The romance development was definitely believable, but it was a classic case of secret admiration with no real hate in sight. That being said, I ate up every bit of it. There was not a slow part in this book anywhere. Moving on to the dark romance genre, I'm reading Ruthless People by J.J. McAvoy. So this is definitely out of my comfort zone. I think of the 4, this one might be the most out of my comfort zone. But as far as enemies to lovers go, I kind of have high hopes for it because dark romance can definitely get away with a little bit more than a rom-com. The back just says 1 marriage, 2 bosses, 3 times the chaos. I know this book is an arranged marriage trope between the head of the Italian mafia and the head of the Irish mafia. I'm gonna start reading it and see what I think. From the jump, this book had a lot going on, and I wasn't totally loving the writing style, but it got bonus points for having a dual POV. Okay, I've been reading for a little bit. I'm on chapter 5 and I have some thoughts. I'm on page 40. I don't know if, I think because it's a dark romance, it almost feels kind of like soap opera-y, the way that they're talking, and like it's like so dramatic that I'm like, okay, relax. Where I left off, the heir to the Irish mob and the heir to the Italian mob have just met and they're about to be married. And the first time they're alone in a room together, we're hearing some explosions of some kind. Not really sure what's happening. One of them already might be unalived. I doubt it. But if they're already at each other's throats like that and I'm less than 50 pages in, I don't know, okay. While filming this video, I unintentionally ended up traveling a lot, so when I had a chance to go to Vegas while reading a mafia dark romance, it was too good to pass up. Okay, so we've been in Vegas, but I thought it was kind of ironic to be reading a mafia romance while in Vegas. That was not on purpose. I'm a little bit less than halfway done with it, but it goes really quickly. There's definitely a lot more enemies to lovers in this than there was in the other one. I'm gonna try to finish it tomorrow on my flight home, and I'll let you know my final thoughts. Well, final thoughts was the plan, but then this book seriously started to drag. It took everything in me to finish it. Right when I thought the plot had picked up, it would change directions and go back to the main characters having the same argument over and over again, and eventually I just got really bored. That took me way longer than it should have taken. I just finished Ruthless, people, and I have to say I'm disappointed. It felt like I'd make it through a chunk and then the book would like regenerate more pages or something. The romance in this did not feel believable, and honestly it just wasn't very addictive to read, but they did actually hate each other, so it checked at least one box. They hated each other for sure, they fell in love with each other, but I still didn't really care about them because the actual storyline wasn't it. Now let's see if the historical romance girlies do it any better. Dark romance was a flop. Maybe I picked a bad one. If y'all have other dark romance recommendations for me, let me know. But I'm moving on now to How to Marry a Marquis. It's the second in the series of Agents of the Crown. For the people who have read these, watching me go into it blindly, that's probably so embarrassing because I bet I'm wrong about things. Don't lick me. Don't lick me. You can read it with me. Ironically, after I filmed that, I started reading and realized I was actually very wrong. The main characters in this were immediately attracted to each other, not even an inkling of hate. Don't believe everything you read on the internet, because this was definitely not an enemies to lovers. I jinxed myself on that one. I have been played a fool. That's okay. I persisted. And I found one. So I'm actually going to be reading It Happened One Autumn by Lisa Kleypas. I'll read the back of this one and then we'll read this one. Relax. It is like very classic historical romance cover, so that's cool. This is a Regency era romance about Lillian Bowman, a bold American heiress, and Marcus Westcliff, a stern and proper English earl. When Lillian comes to stay at his estate for the season, it's only a matter of time before they're forced to decide if it's hate they feel for each other or if it's something more. This is for sure enemies to lovers. It literally says, a man Lillian despises more than anyone she's ever met. Okay, that's an enemies to lovers. Hopefully. I spent the rest of the evening reading, and I have truly never been more surprised at how quickly I was sucked into a book. It picked up on chapter 2 and literally never slowed down. I have been reading It Happened One Autumn It's like an OG, old school Meemaw romance. And let me tell you something, I know exactly why those Meemaws were addicted. Because this is special. This is really something special. I am 100 pages in. It's giving very Viscount Who Loved Me from Bridgerton, but this feels like a little more like adult almost. Like the way that they're talking about things. I know, it's more exciting to me. I didn't expect it. I honestly expected this to drag, but girl, did it not. So due to the nature of historical romance, a lot of the hatred these characters have for each other is shown in more passive-aggressive ways. However, this has taken some surprisingly high-stakes turns where Lillian even goes missing at one point, so I feel like the plot is making up for the lack of intense face-to-face hatred. Also, the romance in this is a little more closed door, but it's still so fun, and when it comes to male yearning, I think we could all take a note from the historical romance girls. That's crazy. That's crazy. Safe to say, I finished this book pretty fast, like less than 48 hours. This is the oddball book of this video because I literally was not even intending to read this. It was the book that I just randomly picked because my other historical romance was not an enemies to lovers and didn't work out. So I just found this one by Lisa Kleypas. I'd never heard of her before. Some of the other girls on social media have been like, oh wow, I love her. So apparently she's popular. I didn't know, I'm new to the genre-ish. I was obsessed with it, and I will be reading the other ones in the series with the American Heiress, Lord Westcliff. Like, they really were complete opposites of each other. There were some real stakes in this, and I truly believed, which was a big one, I believed them falling in love. Like, it felt like a natural development, and they had to get over a lot of their like hateful feelings towards each other and the way that they lived and the way that they were. The hatred was there, the romance was believable, and I was insanely addicted to this book. It checked all of my boxes, I think. The only thing really was like, maybe there could have been like some more like one-on-one face-to-face hatred. I think it's in first place. Time for the next one. The next book, we're going into fantasy, finally. And I got From Blood and Ash by Jennifer Armentrout. And I will say, a lot of things I've seen, a lot of the recommendations I got for enemies to lovers was to read Cruel Prince. I don't like that series. I've read it and I didn't like it. That's maybe my only true enemies to lovers fantasy romance I've read, but I had to read one for this, and this one has really good reviews. From Blood and Ash follows Poppy, also known as the Maiden, who was chosen by gods and hidden away from living a normal life. Everything changes though when she meets Hawk, her new guard, whose charm and secrets pull her into a dangerous world of desire and betrayal. The fact that she's a maiden is interesting and is like, I don't know, being sold or something. And also, like it says, he incites her anger and makes her question everything she believes in and tempts her with the forbidden. Yeah, that sounds spicy. I hope this one's spicy. Madi's also going to be reading this one with me, and I'm really excited. But I'm interested to see if it'll beat the enemies to lovers of the historical run, because that was so surprising to me. It's forced proximity. But it's forced proximity, you're right. And it's fantasy, and fantasy is naturally more intense, so. As soon as I got home, I set the vibes and immediately started reading. This wasn't set up like a traditional enemies to lovers, but the tension between Poppy and Hawk is so good. I was immediately hooked. Fantasy books tend to go a lot more in depth, so I'll have to read some more before I can give a proper check-in. I definitely stayed up way too late reading this, but I don't even regret it. I was having the time of my life. Okay, I read quite a bit last night. I want to say I'm like almost 300 pages in. It's like a 500-page book, 480 pages, something like that, and I'm really liking it. It goes really fast, like especially for a fantasy book, really fast. And I think I know where it's going. I'm not gonna give anything away yet, but I'm gonna make a coffee, listen to the audiobook, and see how far I can get. I was so invested in this book that I stirred my coffee like this for probably a minute and a half straight. I do not remember the last time a book made me feel this crazy. At one point, I literally just started walking in circles. Needless to say, there was a lot going on in this book. I just have to say, the main girl, Poppy, her female rage is really rivaling Aelin from Throne of Glass. I just have to put that out there. She's badass. On top of the phenomenal writing, this book also has some very well-placed spice, and at this point, we all know how I feel about that. Oh my god! Honk! I fear I have a new book boyfriend. Ow! Wow, I'm enjoying this, and I think I know where it's going, and I'm terrified! I'm pretty sure my facial expression says it all, but the plot twist was insane. Oh my god. I'm gonna need some time to process that for sure. It was incredible. Immediate 5 stars, and now I have to read every single book after this. This is the best romantasy that I have read since ACOTAR. New favorite author. Now, on the topic of enemies to lovers. Honestly, I was a little bit unsure at first, and then I started to see where this book was going. I'm not gonna spoil it. It was definitely more of a lovers to enemies, and I'm assuming in the next book, back to lovers. The romance in this was perfection, and I was obviously addicted. The hatred was there, it just came a little bit later, so I'd say it checked all 3 boxes. Amazing, 5 stars, addictive, incredible. I'll be reading the entire series. It's gonna become my new personality. So, you know, I think it's gonna be between historical romance and fantasy, which is not what I expected at all. Both of these books hit all of my requirements, but fantasy was just a little more unconventional. Based solely on enemies to lovers, historical romance is the winner. But when it comes to my favorite read, fantasy takes the cake. Case closed.